The mining ship Prosperity shuddered as another asteroid fragment scraped against its hull. Sarah Chun gripped the control panel, her knuckles white against the blue glow of the instrument lights. At 19, she was the youngest crew member aboard the deep space mining vessel, but her steady hands and quick reflexes had earned her the position of navigation specialist. "Sarah, plot us a course around that debris field," Captain Morrison called from his command chair. "We can't afford any more hull damage." Sarah's fingers danced across the holographic display, calculating trajectories and safe passage routes through the asteroid belt. The Prosperity was 3 months into a 6-month mining expedition in the Outer Rim territories, far beyond the protection of Earth's naval patrols. Out here, they were truly alone among the stars. "Course plotted, Captain," Sarah reported. "We should clear the field in approximately 4 hours." "Good work." Morrison nodded approvingly. "Johnson, take us through nice and easy." The ship began its careful navigation through the floating rocks and debris when suddenly every alarm on the bridge started screaming at once. Sarah's console erupted in warning lights as something massive appeared on their sensors. "Captain, we have multiple contacts approaching fast." Sarah's voice stayed calm despite her racing heart. "They're big, sir. Really big." Morrison leaned forward, studying the tactical display. "Pirates." "Negative, sir. The signatures are unlike anything in our database." Sarah's training kicked in as she analyzed the readings. "They're organic, Captain. These aren't ships." The view screen flickered to life, showing the space ahead of them. What Sarah saw made her breath catch in her throat. Creatures the size of frigates glided through space with impossible grace. Their bodies were serpentine and covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water. Massive wings, translucent and veined with bioluminescent patterns, propelled them through the vacuum of space without any visible technology. "Space dragons," whispered Johnson from the pilot station. "I heard rumors, but I never believed them." The creatures were beautiful and terrifying. Each one was easily 200 meters long, with multiple sets of wings along their bodies and heads that resembled ancient Earth dragons but with alien features. Crystal formations jutted from their spines, pulsing with internal light. Their eyes glowed like stars, intelligent and ancient. "They're surrounding us," Sarah reported, trying to keep her voice steady. The creatures moved with coordinated precision, cutting off every escape route. "Captain, I'm reading energy buildups from those crystal formations." Morrison hit the communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We have encountered unknown alien life forms. Remain calm and follow emergency protocols." The lead dragon, larger than the others with deep purple scales that seemed to absorb light, positioned itself directly in front of the Prosperity. When it opened its mouth, Sarah expected to see teeth and flame. Instead, a beam of coherent energy lanced out, striking their engines with surgical precision. The ship lurched as the engines died. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows, and Sarah felt the familiar vibration of the ship's heart fade to nothing. "Engines offline," Johnson reported. "It didn't destroy us. They disabled us." Sarah studied her readings with growing amazement. "Captain, that energy beam was incredibly precise. They targeted only our propulsion systems. Our life support, communications, everything else is intact." "Intelligent, then," Morrison said grimly. "They want us alive." The dragons began to glow brighter, their crystal formations pulsing in synchronized patterns. Sarah watched her instruments in fascination as energy readings spiked around the ship. "Sir, they're generating some kind of field around us," she reported. "It's like nothing I've ever seen. The energy patterns are incredibly complex." The ship shuddered again, but this time it felt different. Through the view screen, Sarah could see they were moving, but not under their own power. The dragons were somehow carrying the entire ship, wrapped in their mysterious energy field. "Where are they taking us?" Morrison wondered aloud. Sarah worked frantically at her console, trying to track their movement through space. "They're heading toward the system's outer planet." "Captain, Long-range sensors show massive structures on the surface. Cities, maybe. This isn't just a pack of space animals. This is a civilization. The journey took several hours. During that time, Sarah observed the dragons with scientific fascination despite their dire situation. They communicated through patterns of light that flowed across their scales like living artwork. Their formation flying was perfect, adjusting for gravitational changes and cosmic debris without any visible effort. "They're magnificent," she whispered to herself. As they approached the planet, Sarah's sensors revealed the true scope of what they faced. The world below was covered in crystalline structures that rose from the surface like frozen lightning. Cities of living crystal stretched across continents, pulsing with the same bioluminescent patterns as the dragons themselves. "Look at the size of those structures," Johnson breathed. "Some of those spires must be 10 kilometers tall." "And stable," Sarah added, studying the engineering readings. "The crystal matrix is self-supporting. This technology is beyond anything we have." The dragons guided them toward a landing platform that extended from one of the larger spires. As they descended, Sarah could see more dragons moving through the air around the crystal cities. Some were smaller, possibly juveniles, playing among the spires in complex aerial games. Others were massive, ancient-looking creatures that dwarfed even their captors. The Prosperity settled onto the platform with surprising gentleness. Through the view screen, they watched as dozens of dragons landed around them, their eyes fixed on a human vessel with unmistakable intelligence and curiosity. "Captain," Sarah said quietly, "I don't think they mean to harm us. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be dead." Morrison nodded slowly. "But what do they want?" Their answer came in the form of a sound that seemed to bypass their ears entirely and speak directly to their minds. It was musical and complex, layered with harmonies that human ears couldn't fully process. Somehow, though, Sarah understood the meaning behind it. "Welcome, star travelers. We have been waiting." The crew exchanged startled glances. "Did everyone else hear that?" Morrison asked. Sarah nodded, along with the rest of the bridge crew. Some kind of telepathic communication, she theorized. The neural patterns in that signal were incredibly sophisticated. The voice came again, and this time Sarah could identify its source. The large purple dragon that had led their capture was approaching the ship, its massive head visible through the main view screen. Up close, Sarah could see the ancient intelligence in those star-bright eyes. "We are the Vakari. You are the first of your kind to venture so far into our domain. We must understand what manner of beings you are." Captain Morrison stepped forward. "I am Captain Morrison of the Earth vessel Prosperity. We come in peace. We were mining asteroids when you found us." Sarah watched the dragon's reaction with fascination. The creature's head tilted slightly, and patterns of light flowed across its scales in what she was beginning to recognize as a form of expression. "Peace," the dragon repeated, and Sarah could hear the concept being examined, tested. An interesting notion from such small, fragile creatures. You travel the void in metal shells, burning resources to push yourselves between worlds. Yet you speak of peace. We explore to learn and to find resources our people need, Morrison explained. We don't seek conflict, and yet conflict follows your kind like shadow follows light. We have observed your species for many cycles, watching your wars, your destruction of worlds. You are a contradiction, capable of great beauty and terrible violence. Sarah stepped forward, drawn by intellectual curiosity despite the danger. You've been watching humanity? For how long? The dragon's attention shifted to her, and Sarah felt the weight of that ancient gaze like a physical force. You're different, small one. Your mind burns brighter than the others. You seek understanding, not just survival. I'm a scientist, Sarah said simply. Learning is what I do. Show us, the dragon said, and suddenly, the ship's systems came alive without any input from the crew. Displays activated, showing technical readouts and operational parameters. Show us what your kind truly values. Sarah realized this was some kind of test. The dragons weren't just curious about humans as a species, they were evaluating them. She moved to her console and began calling up information about human scientific achievements, art, literature, and philosophy. She showed them images of Earth's forests and oceans, recordings of human music, mathematical proofs, and medical breakthroughs. The dragon observed it all with intense concentration, the patterns on its scales shifting constantly. Other dragons gathered around the ship, adding their own observations to what Sarah was beginning to understand was a collective consciousness of some kind. Fascinating, Asterisk the voice said finally. Asterisk, you create beauty alongside destruction. You heal and harm with equal passion. You are young in the void, yet already you carry the potential for greatness or catastrophe. Asterisk, what does that mean for us? Morrison asked. It means, Captain Morrison of Earth, that we must know more. Your crew will be our guests while we study your kind more closely. Do not fear. No harm will come to those who pose no threat. Asterisk Sarah felt a chill as the implications became clear. You're going to keep us here. For a time, yes. But you, Sarachin of Earth, you will come with us. Your mind holds questions we find intriguing. Asterisk before anyone could react, the platform beneath the ship began to glow. Sarah felt a strange, tingling sensation, and then the world dissolved around her in patterns of light and energy. The last thing she saw was Captain Morrison reaching toward her, his face twisted with concern and helplessness. When the light faded, Sarah found herself standing in a vast chamber carved from the same living crystal as the spires outside. The walls pulsed with soft bioluminescence, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. She was alone, but somehow she knew she was being watched. Do not be afraid, Sarah Chun. Asterisk the voice came again, gentler now. Asterisk, you carry something we have not seen in many cycles of the stars. Curiosity without conquest. Wonder without the desire to possess. We would understand this rare quality. Asterisk Sarah looked around the crystal chamber, noting the impossible architecture and the way light seemed to flow through the walls like liquid. Despite her fear, she couldn't help but marvel at the beauty of it all. What do you want to know? She asked. Everything, Asterisk came to reply. Asterisk, but first we would have you know us. Knowledge shared is knowledge doubled, as your people sometimes say. Asterisk the chamber filled with new light, and Sarah gasped as images began to form in the crystal walls around her. She saw the history of the Vakari, their rise from a world of crystal caves to masters of space and time. She witnessed their encounters with dozens of other species, some peaceful, others violent, all of them ultimately disappointing in their inability to rise above their base nature. We have grown weary of lesser beings, Asterisk the voice explained. Asterisk, most species that reach the stars do so through conquest and exploitation. They see the universe as something to be claimed rather than understood. We have begun to believe that intelligence and wisdom were incompatible with the drive to explore. Asterisk, but you think humans might be different? Sarah asked. We think some humans might be different. You, for instance. Your mind seeks truth rather than advantage. This is rare among star-traveling species. Asterisk Sarah absorbed this information, recognizing the honor and the burden of being chosen as humanity's representative. What happens if you decide we're not worth your time? The pause that followed was pregnant with implications. Asterisk then, your ship will be returned to the edge of our space with its memory banks wiped of our existence. Your people will continue their expansion until they encounter someone less patient than we are. Asterisk, and if we pass your test, then perhaps the universe gains a species worthy of the knowledge we have gathered across the eons. Perhaps we finally find the companions we have long sought among the stars. Asterisk Sarah realized she was holding humanity's future in her hands. The weight of responsibility was crushing, but also exhilarating. This was the moment every explorer dreamed of. First contact with a truly advanced civilization. How she conducted herself in the coming days or weeks could determine whether humanity remained alone in the universe or joined a greater community of intelligent life. Rest now, Sarah-chun. Tomorrow your real education begins. We have much to show you, and perhaps much to learn from you in return. Asterisk as the bioluminescent patterns in the walls dimmed to a soft, restful glow, Sarah settled onto what appeared to be a crystal formation that molded itself to her body like the most comfortable bed she'd ever experienced. Despite everything that had happened, she felt a strange sense of anticipation rather than fear. She was about to become the first human to truly understand an alien civilization. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them. The future of two species might depend on what she learned in this crystal chamber, surrounded by beings who could cross space on wings of starlight and speak with the voices of ancient wisdom. In her last conscious thought before sleep took her, Sarah wondered if she was strong enough to bear the weight of such momentous responsibility. Tomorrow would begin to provide the answer. Sarah woke to the sound of crystalline music that seemed to emerge from the very walls around her. The chamber had transformed while she slept, its surfaces now displaying moving patterns of light that told stories in a visual language she was beginning to understand. She sat up on the crystal formation that had served as her bed, surprised to find herself completely refreshed despite the stress of the previous day. "Good morning, Sarah-chun. Did you rest well?" Asterisk the voice belonged to the purple dragon from yesterday, but now she could sense nuances in its communication that had been invisible before. There was warmth there and genuine curiosity, along with something that felt remarkably like amusement. "I did, thank you. I'm surprised by how comfortable that crystal bed was. Our living crystal responds to biological needs. It sensed your requirements and adapted accordingly. We have learned much about human physiology by observing your sleep patterns." Asterisk Sarah stood and walked to one of the walls, studying the flowing patterns of light. "You've been watching me sleep?" "Not watching in the way you might imagine. Our crystal matrix is sensitive to all forms of energy, including the bioelectric patterns of living beings. We can read health, emotional state, and cognitive activity without intrusion. You dream in mathematics, Sarah-chun. This is unusual among your species." Asterisk Sarah blushed slightly. It was true that she often dreamed about equations and scientific problems. "Math is how I understand the universe. It's the one language that works the same way no matter where you are. An elegant perspective. Come, there is much to show you today." Asterisk the wall in front of Sarah dissolved, revealing a corridor that stretched in a soft, luminescent distance. She stepped through, marveling at how the crystal floor felt solid, yet somehow yielded perfectly to her footsteps. The dragon moved beside her, its massive form somehow fitting easily in the corridor despite its size. "How do you do that?" Sarah asked. "You're enormous, but you move through these spaces like you're much smaller. Space is more flexible than your people realize. We learned long ago to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. What you see is only a small portion of my true form." Asterisk they emerged into a vast chamber that took Sarah's breath away. It was like standing inside a living galaxy. Thousands of Vakari floated through the space on wings of pure energy, their scales reflecting light in patterns of impossible beauty. Some were engaged in activities Sarah could only guess at, manipulating fields of energy that created temporary structures of stunning complexity. "This is our primary research collective. Here we study the fundamental forces that bind the universe together." Asterisk Sarah watched a group of smaller dragons working together to create what looked like a miniature star. They wove energy between them like textile workers at a cosmic loom, building layers of fusion plasma contained within magnetic fields of their own design. "You create stars as experiments?" Sarah asked, amazed. "Small ones, for specific purposes. Stellar engineering is one of our oldest arts. Come, observe more closely." Asterisk they approached the group working on the artificial star. Sarah could see now that they weren't just creating a fusion reaction. They were building something far more complex. The energy patterns spiraling around the miniature sun contained information, vast databases of knowledge encoded in the very structure of the plasma streams. We store our accumulated wisdom in stellar matrices. Each star seed contains the history and knowledge of our civilization. Should our physical forms ever be destroyed, our legacy will continue to burn among the galaxies. Asterisk, it's beautiful, Sarah whispered. And practical. You've turned information storage into art. One of the smaller dragons working on the star seed paused in its weaving and regarded Sarah with bright golden eyes. Its mental voice was lighter than the elders, musical with youth and enthusiasm. The human appreciates the aesthetic component. Most species we encounter focus only on the utility of our creations. Asterisk, this is Zethka. Asterisk, the elder dragon explained. Asterisk, one of our most gifted young researchers. She has been eager to meet you since your arrival. Asterisk, Zethka's scales shimmered with what Sarah was learning to recognize as excitement. Asterisk, is it true that your species creates art without functional purpose? Pure expressions of beauty and emotion? Asterisk, yes, Sarah said. We paint, write music, tell stories, create sculptures. Sometimes just because they're beautiful. Fascinating. We have observed this in your transmissions, but we find it difficult to comprehend. All our creations serve multiple purposes. Beauty is efficiency made manifest. Asterisk, Sarah thought about this perspective. Maybe that's where we can learn from each other. We could show you art for its own sake, and you could teach us to make our functional creations more beautiful. The elder dragon's mental voice carried approval. Asterisk, already you think like a bridge between species. This is why we chose well in bringing you here. Asterisk, they continued through the research collective, and Sarah saw wonders that challenge her understanding of physics. Dragons working together to fold space-time into origami patterns. Others cultivating what appeared to be living mathematics, equations that grew and evolved like organic creatures. In one section, she watched a group experimenting with temporal manipulation, creating bubbles of accelerated time where they could observe the evolution of entire ecosystems in minutes. Your science is based on cooperation, Sarah observed. Every project I see involves multiple individuals working together. Individual brilliance is limited by individual perspective. Only through the joining of minds can we approach true understanding. This is why your species interests us. Despite your competitive nature, you sometimes achieve this unity of purpose. Asterisk, they paused at an observation platform that looked out over the Crystal City. From this height, Sarah could see the full scope of Vakari civilization. The spires weren't just buildings. They were living organisms that grew and adapted to the needs of their inhabitants. Streams of energy flowed between them like rivers of light, carrying information and resources throughout the city. Our civilization is billions of years old. Asterisk, the elder explained. Asterisk, we have seen the birth and death of galaxies, witnessed the rise and fall of countless species. We have become gardeners of space and time, nurturing the conditions that allow life and intelligence to flourish. Asterisk, but you become lonely, Sarah said suddenly, understanding flooding through her. All that knowledge, all that power, but no one to share it with. No equals to challenge your thinking or offer new perspectives. The elder dragon was quiet for a long moment, its scales shifting through colors that spoke of deep emotion. Asterisk, you understand quickly, Sarah Chun. Yes, we have grown isolated in our advancement. Lesser species fear us or seek to exploit our knowledge. Aggressive species see us as obstacles to be conquered or avoided. We have begun to believe that intelligence naturally led to isolation. Asterisk, what changed your mind? Your crew's reaction when we disabled your ship. Your captain's first concern was for his people's safety, not for profit or tactical advantage. Your engineer Johnson's wonder at our beauty rather than calculation of our threat potential. And your own response to our test yesterday, sharing knowledge freely rather than hoarding it as a bargaining tool. Asterisk, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders again. So what happens now? This is obviously more than just observing my sleep patterns. Now you learn what we can teach, and we discover what you can offer in return. But first, there's someone who wishes to meet you. Asterisk the platform began to move, carrying them toward the largest spire in the city. As they rose through the crystal structure, Sarah noticed the energy patterns becoming more complex, more ancient. The very air seemed to thrum with accumulated wisdom and power. You go to meet the eldest, Asterisk Zethka explained, having followed them. Asterisk, she has slept for 1,000 years, but she woke when we brought news of your species. She remembers the early days of our civilization, when we were young and made many mistakes. Asterisk, what kind of mistakes? Sarah asked. The kind your species is still making. Wars over resources that could be shared. Destruction of worlds that could be healed. The belief that strength comes from dominance rather than understanding. Asterisk, they reached the apex of the spire, and Sarah found herself in a chamber that defied description. It was vast and intimate at the same time, ancient beyond measure, yet somehow timeless. At its center, coiled in patterns that hurt her eyes to follow, was the largest dragon Sarah had yet seen. Her scales were like galaxies in miniature, each one containing swirling patterns of stars and nebulae. When the eldest opened her eyes, Sarah felt the presence of a mind that had contemplated the universe since before Earth's sun was born. So, Asterisk, the ancient voice whispered across eons, Asterisk, the children of the small blue world have finally reached our domain. I remember when your star was nothing but cosmic dust, Sarah Chun of Earth. Asterisk, Sarah found her voice somehow. You've been watching us that long? Watching many worlds, many species. Yours showed promise from early on. The way you learned to work together despite your differences. The art you created in caves when you barely understood fire. The mathematics you developed to predict the movements of celestial bodies. We have been interested, Asterisk, but you've never made contact before. Contact changes everything. Once a species knows they are not alone, they can never return to innocence. We have seen too many promising civilizations destroy themselves with the shock of discovering greater powers in the universe. We wait until they are ready, Asterisk, and you think we're ready now? The eldest's mental laughter was like the sound of solar winds across cosmic distances. Asterisk, ready? Perhaps not, but necessary, yes. We face challenges that require fresh perspectives, young minds unburdened by eons of accumulated assumptions. Your species may be chaotic and unpredictable, but that unpredictability might be exactly what the universe needs. Asterisk, Sarah felt a chill of anticipation. What kind of challenges? Later. First, you must prove that humans can learn without destroying what they touch, can accept knowledge without using it as a weapon, can see beyond their own immediate needs to consider the greater harmony of all life. Asterisk, the eldest gestured with one massive wing, and the chamber filled with visions of other species the Vakari had encountered. Sarah saw civilizations that had burned themselves to ash in nuclear fire upon learning of advanced technologies. Others that had turned inward, abandoning exploration to worship the aliens who had uplifted them. Still others that had tried to conquer the Vakari themselves, leading to their complete annihilation. Each contact taught us caution, but your crew's behavior suggests your species might be different. The question is, are you representative of humanity, or are you exceptions to your nature? Asterisk, Sarah thought of all the humans she'd known. The good ones, the bad ones, the ones in between who tried their best in an imperfect world. We're individuals, she said finally. Some of us are wise, some foolish, some brave, some cowardly. But at our best, we can be more than the sum of our parts. We can choose to be better than our nature demands. Choice, Asterisk, the eldest mused. Asterisk, yes, that is the key variable we have been studying. Most species follow predictable patterns based on their evolutionary history. But yours shows remarkable capacity for conscious change. This gives us hope? Asterisk, hope for what? For the universe itself? Young Sarah. There are threats approaching that even we cannot face alone. Ancient forces that see all life as an infection to be cleansed. The time of isolation is ending, whether we wish it or not. We need allies who can think in ways we have forgotten, who can find solutions we cannot see. The weight of cosmic responsibility pressed down on Sarah. First contact had seemed like the opportunity of a lifetime, but this was turning into something far larger. Humanity wasn't just being evaluated for membership in some galactic community. They were being recruited for a war that spanned the universe. "Do not be overwhelmed," the eldest said gently, reading her thoughts. Even the smallest contribution can change the course of galactic events. We do not expect humans to become something they are not. We simply hope they might choose to become the best version of what they already are. And if we fail your tests, then we face the coming darkness alone, as we have faced everything else for countless eons. But if you succeed, if your species proves capable of wisdom alongside their passion, then perhaps the universe will know a new dawn. The eldest began to settle back into her contemplative coil, but her ancient eyes remained fixed on Sarah. Rest now, young one. Tomorrow you begin your true education. We will show you wonders and horrors, knowledge and responsibility. By the time you return to your ship, you will carry the future of both our species in your understanding. As Sarah was led back through the crystal corridors, her mind reeled with everything she'd learned. The dragons weren't just studying humanity for academic interest. They were preparing for something massive, something that threatened every living being in the universe. And somehow, chaotic, unpredictable humanity might hold the key to survival. Back in her chamber, as the bioluminescent walls dimmed for sleep, Sarah stared up at what she now knew was a window to the stars beyond. Out there, ancient threats were stirring, preparing for a conflict that could determine the fate of life itself. And she, a 19-year-old mining crew navigator from Earth, was being prepared to help lead humanity into that cosmic storm. The responsibility was terrifying, but as she drifted off to sleep, surrounded by the gentle hum of living crystal and the distant songs of dragons, Sarah felt something else growing alongside her fear: determination. If the universe needed humanity's chaos and unpredictability to survive, then she would make sure they were ready to deliver both. Sarah's education began before dawn with an experience that redefined her understanding of reality itself. The eldest had spoken of showing her wonders and horrors, and the first lesson delivered both in equal measure. The chamber walls dissolve around her as she woke, replaced by the vast darkness of deep space. But this wasn't the empty void she knew from her navigation training. This space writhed with malevolent intelligence, filled with shapes that hurt to perceive directly. Ancient entities older than galaxies moved through the darkness, their very presence causing stars to flicker and die. "These are the Devourers," came Zethka's voice, though the young dragon was nowhere to be seen. They existed before matter learned to dance with energy, before the first stars ignited the cosmos. They remember the universe when it was cold and empty, and they wish to return it to that state. Sarah watched in fascination and horror as one of the entities approached a populated star system. Billions of lives snuffed out in moments, not through violence, but through something worse, the complete negation of their existence. The planets, the star, even the space between them simply ceased to be, leaving behind a wound in reality itself. They do not destroy, the eldest's ancient voice explained. Destruction implies that something once existed. The Devourers erase. They unmake the very concept that life ever was. How do you fight something like that? Sarah asked, her voice small in the cosmic darkness. For eons, we have not fought them. We have hidden, used our knowledge to mask our presence, to make ourselves invisible to their hunger. But they grow stronger with each passing age, and our hiding places grow fewer. The vision shifted, showing Sarah the Vicari's attempts at defense. Massive constructs of living crystal that could shield entire solar systems. Temporal barriers that place civilizations outside the normal flow of time. Reality anchors that reinforce the structure of space-time itself against the Devourer's unmaking touch. All temporary measures, asterisk the eldest admitted. Asterisk we can delay the inevitable, but we cannot stop it. Every solution we devise springs from the same logical framework, the same patterns of thought we have used for billions of years. We have become trapped by our own wisdom. Asterisk the vision faded, returning Sarah to her crystal chamber, but the images remained burned into her memory. You think humans can find a solution you've missed? We think humans might approach the problem from angles we cannot see. Your species' greatest weakness may also be its greatest strength. Your refusal to accept limitations, even logical ones. Asterisk Zethka materialized in the chamber, her scales bright with excitement. Today we show you how we think, so you can understand why we need you to think differently. What followed was the most intensive education of Sarah's life. The dragons didn't just tell her about their scientific methods. They allowed her to experience them directly, temporarily linking her mind to their collective consciousness. Sarah felt her individual perspective expand to encompass the thoughts and memories of beings who had contemplated the universe for geological ages. She learned how the Vakari approached problems with infinite patience, considering every variable across vast spans of time. Their solutions were elegant, perfect, and ultimately limited by their need for logical consistency. They could not conceive of deliberately choosing imperfect solutions that might lead to better outcomes through pure chance. You see the limitation. Asterisk the eldest observed as Sarah's mind reeled from the experience of thinking on a cosmic scale. Asterisk, we have eliminated randomness from our thinking. We cannot take the leaps of intuition that sometimes lead to breakthrough discoveries. Asterisk, but that's exactly what humans do best, Sarah said, understanding flooding through her. We make lucky guesses. We try things that shouldn't work, but sometimes do anyway. Precisely. Show us. Asterisk the dragons presented Sarah with simplified models of their anti-devourer defenses, challenging her to find flaws or improvements. For hours, she studied their crystal matrices and energy fields, marveling at their mathematical perfection while searching for the chaos her species was famous for. Finally, inspiration struck. You're trying to block them, she said, building walls and barriers. But what if instead of keeping them out, you let them in and then give them something they don't expect? The dragon's mental voices carried confusion. Elaborate, Sarah began sketching diagrams in the air, her hands moving faster than her conscious thoughts. The Devourers erase existence, right? They expect to encounter matter, energy, life, things they can unmake. But what if you created something that was already unmade? A trap made of deliberate nothingness. Impossible. Nothingness cannot contain structure. Asterisk, not nothingness like empty space. Nothingness like a mathematical paradox given physical form. Something that exists specifically by not existing. The chamber fell silent as the dragons processed this concept. Sarah could feel their ancient minds working, trying to force her chaotic human logic into their ordered framework. The mathematics do not resolve, asterisk Zethka said finally. Such a construct would violate fundamental laws. Exactly. Sarah grinned. That's what makes it perfect. The Devourers unmake things that follow natural laws. But something that breaks those laws deliberately, something that shouldn't exist according to physics but does anyway, they might not be able to process it. A trap made of impossibility itself. Asterisk the eldest mused. Asterisk, it is so illogical that it circles back toward genius. Or madness. Asterisk, in human history, those two things often went together. For the next several days, Sarah worked with teams of Vakari scientists to develop her impossible concept. The dragons provided their mathematical precision and vast knowledge, while Sarah contributed her species' talent for productive chaos. Together, they began to design something that had never existed before, a weapon made of pure paradox. The breakthrough came when Sarah suggested using human consciousness itself as a stabilizing factor. We're really good at believing contradictory things at the same time, she explained. Maybe that's exactly what this weapon needs. Minds that can hold impossible concepts without trying to resolve them. You propose to use human irrationality as a fundamental component of cosmic defense, Asterisk the eldest said, and Sarah could hear something like amusement in the ancient voice. When you put it like that, it sounds crazy, Sarah admitted. But crazy might be exactly what we need. As their work progressed, Sarah began to understand why the Vakari had been so cautious about contact with younger species. The knowledge they shared was dangerous. She learned how to manipulate fundamental forces, how to create pocket universes, how to fold space-time like origami. In the wrong hands, such knowledge could destroy entire civilizations. This is why we test, Asterisk Zethka explained during one of their breaks. Asterisk power without wisdom leads to catastrophe. We have seen it countless times, Asterisk, but wisdom without courage leads to stagnation, Sarah replied. Maybe that's what both our species need to balance each other out. The young dragon's scales shimmered with consideration. You suggest partnership rather than teacher and student. I suggest we're both students. You can teach us wisdom, but maybe we can teach you how to take chances again. How to risk failure for the chance of something better. Their theoretical weapon was taking shape, but it needed testing. The dragons had constructed an isolated pocket dimension where they could experiment safely, protected from the notice of the devourers. Sarah watched as they built the first prototype, a crystalline matrix that existed in a state of permanent logical contradiction, held stable only by conscious will. It is beautiful, Asterisk, one of the elder dragons observed. Asterisk, and terrifying. If this construct were to become unstable, it could unravel reality itself. Asterisk, that's what makes it effective, Sarah said. The devourers feed on certainty, on the predictable laws that govern existence. This thing is so uncertain that it might be indigestible. The test was scheduled for the following day, and Sarah spent the evening in conversation with her young friend Zethka. The dragon had become more than just a research partner. She represented the bridge between their species that Sarah hoped to build. Are you frightened? Asterisk Zethka asked as they watched the artificial sunset through the crystal walls. Terrified, Sarah admitted. Not of the test, but of what comes after. If this works, everything changes. Humans will be brought into your cosmic community, but will also be asked to fight in a war that's older than our entire civilization. And if it fails? Asterisk, then you'll have to find another way, and my people will remain safely ignorant of the dangers lurking in the dark. Sarah paused. Sometimes I wonder if that might be better for everyone. Do you regret coming here? Asterisk Sarah thought about her crew aboard the Prosperity, probably wondering if she was dead or worse. She thought about Earth, peaceful in its ignorance of cosmic threats. Then, she thought about the devourers, slowly consuming reality itself, while civilizations hid in the shadows. No, she said finally. Someone had to take this step eventually. I'm glad it was me. The next morning brought delegations from across Vakari space to witness the test. Hundreds of dragons filled the chamber, their combined consciousness focused on the paradox weapon floating at the room's center. Sarah stood beside the eldest, her human mind the final component needed to activate their creation. Are you ready, Sarah, Chin of Earth? Asterisk Sarah took a deep breath and reached out with her consciousness, grasping the logical contradictions that formed the weapon's core. She felt them resist her touch, reality itself recoiling from something that shouldn't exist. But she held on, using her human ability to embrace paradox without trying to resolve it. The weapon activated. The effect was immediate and stunning. The crystalline matrix began to phase in and out of existence, creating ripples in space-time that spread outward in impossible patterns. It was there, and not there simultaneously, real and unreal, existing by the very act of not existing. By the ancient stars, Asterisk the eldest breathed. Asterisk, it works. The mathematics resolve into pure impossibility. Asterisk, now comes the real test, Sarah said. We need to see if it actually affects a devourer. The dragons had prepared for this moment, capturing fragments of devourer energy in containment fields that had cost them centuries to develop. When they released a sample into the chamber with the paradox weapon, Sarah held her breath. The devourer fragment approached the weapon and simply stopped. It circled the crystalline impossibility like a predator confused by prey that didn't fit any category it understood. The fragment pulsed with frustration, attempting to unmake something that was already unmade, to erase something that existed specifically by being erased. Finally, the devourer fragment retreated, unable to process what it had encountered. The chamber erupted in celebration, dragons singing in harmonies that made the crystal walls ring like bells. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she realized what they had accomplished. They had created the first effective defense against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. You have given us hope, Sarah Chun, asterisk the eldest said, her ancient voice thick with emotion. For the first time in a billion years, we see a path to victory. We've given each other hope, Sarah corrected. This weapon only works because human and Vakari minds are working together. Neither of us could have created it alone. Over the following days, plans were made for Sarah's return to her ship and, ultimately, to Earth. She would carry with her knowledge and technologies that would transform human civilization, but also the responsibility of preparing her species for the cosmic war to come. Your crew has been treated well, asterisk Zethka assured her. Asterisk they have learned much about us, and we about them. Captain Morrison shows the tactical thinking we will need in the battles ahead. Engineer Johnson possesses an intuitive understanding of our crystal technology. Each of your companions brings something valuable to our alliance. Asterisk Sarah nodded, thinking about the changes that awaited humanity. They won't believe it at first. Dragons, cosmic threats, weapons made of paradox. It sounds like something from our fantasy stories. Perhaps that is why your species was ready for this truth. You have always told stories of impossible things becoming real. Asterisk the day of departure arrived with mixed emotions. Sarah had grown to love the Crystal City and its ancient inhabitants. She had formed friendships that spanned species and learned wonders that no human had ever imagined. But Earth was calling, along with the massive task of preparing her people for their new role in the cosmos. As the Prosperity lifted off from the crystal platform, Sarah stood on the bridge watching the Dragon City shrink below them. The ship had been modified during their stay, its hull now laced with Vakari crystal that would allow faster-than-light travel and communication across galactic distances. Remember, Sarah Chun, asterisk came the eldest voice one last time. Asterisk, you carry the hopes of two species now, but you also carry their strength. Together, we will face what comes. Asterisk Captain Morrison placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder as they enter hyperspace. Hard to believe it's real, he said quietly. Sarah touched the crystal pendant Zethka had given her as a farewell gift. Through it, she could sense her dragon friend's presence across the light years, a constant reminder that humanity was no longer alone. It's real, she said, watching the stars wheel around them. And it's just the beginning. Behind them, the Vakari were already at work, building the first full-scale paradox weapons and preparing for a war that would decide the fate of existence itself. Ahead lay Earth, and the enormous task of convincing humanity to join a battle they never knew existed. Sarah Chun, who had started this journey as a simple navigation specialist, was returning home as humanity's first ambassador to the stars. The universe had tested both their species and found them worthy of partnership. Now came the real challenge, proving that together they could face the darkness and emerge victorious. As the Prosperity raced toward home through the star-filled void, Sarah began composing the message that would change human civilization forever. It would speak of dragons and paradox weapons, of ancient threats and cosmic alliances. But, most importantly, It would speak of hope. The hope that even in a universe filled with darkness, intelligence, and courage combined could light the way to a better future. The stars themselves seemed to sing with possibility as humanity prepared to take its place among the guardians of the galaxy. The age of isolation was over. The age of heroes had begun.